I will go ahead and turn it over to Sherawn and Wendy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jenny. We are excited to be here with you today. As Jenny mentioned, I am Sherawn Reberry, the Communication and Program Manager for the Idaho Workforce Development Council, and I am also joined by Wendy Seacrist, who is our Executive Director. All right, let's make sure I get this moving here. Today, we are super excited to talk about Idaho Launch Expanded. Before we get to that part of our agenda, though, we are going to provide a quick overview of the Idaho Workforce Development Council, the current Idaho Launch, and then we'll head into the discussion about Idaho Launch Expanded. Hey, just a reminder to mute your mics as you come in. I think Benny explained that this is a meeting instead of a webinar this time, so it's not automatically muting you. But however, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the Next Steps team over there at the State Board Office. Our partnership with them together is one that helps propel each generation to its future self. So thank you, Jenny and Joan and Sarah and everybody else over there on the Next Step team. We are excited to be collaborating and partnering on this as we go forward. So a little overview here. Our work here at the Idaho Workforce Development Council really truly gets Idahoans into the careers that they want and puts them on that path to prosperity. So we also make sure that Idaho's employers have the highly educated, highly skilled talent that they need to thrive today and into the future. We do this by bringing cohesion and providing the expertise and funding to set things in motion for our workforce development partners that we have throughout the state of Idaho. So this today begins with our Idaho students. So we know that there's approximately 22,000 graduates from high school in Idaho each year, but only about 42% of them are going on to traditional post-secondary programs. So that's approximately 13,000 students each year that would potentially be ready to begin their careers right away after high school graduation. And so what we're looking to do, and we'll explain that through Idaho Launch, is how to help those students. So the chart that you're looking at here on the screen really just shows those minimum academic requirements posted per job opening for the state of Idaho. And this was from last year. So we know when we look at our current or future workforce, there's a huge opportunity in our youth when it comes to being able to work with our post-secondary institutions to help craft programs that meet the needs. We can do this through using work-based learning strategies, and then also by increasing line of sight to the careers that Idaho needs. So this helps show ourselves and our youth the vast array of opportunities that are available within the state. So we are going to get to the why today. Why does this matter and what can we do? So before we jump to that, we do want to give a quick just overview of the current Idaho Launch and its successes, and then we'll move on to learning more about the expanded Idaho Launch. So currently, the existing Idaho Launch has had over 45,000 visitors to our launch site. So on the screen, you can see to date the investment that has been made thus far for Idahoans. The chart shows how much we've invested since starting the program. And then in the second column, that's how much has been invested since we were using the ARPA funding. So we do have a positive return on investment. We are seeing, when we pull the data, wage gains of close to $16,000 per year for individuals 1 year after they have been trained. So it really is a great return on investment and giving back to the state. So with that, I will quickly ask if you have any questions about what I have mentioned so far. And then we'll jump into hearing from Wendy on the expanded Idaho Launch. I do see that there is one chat. Let me double check. Okay, oh, that was from Jenny. All right, any other questions? And Jenny, I'm assuming you're going to help monitor the chat and hands raised and stuff.
Yes, I will be your moderator. I got it.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, if I don't see any questions at the moment, we are going to turn it over to Wendy. So Wendy, take it away.
All right, thank you. And Sherawn's going to be kind enough to just go through the slides for me so that we don't have to switch the screen sharing. But I'm Wendy Seacrist. I'm the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Council. And just really happy to have the opportunity to be with you here today and want to make sure that you know how committed we are to keeping you informed. So I so appreciate that Jenny and Sarah and the state board team do these web meetings, and we're happy to come on again next month if we want to do some updates. But as you'll hear from me, we have some good plans in place to make sure that by the time you start the school year in August, September, that you've got all of the resources, information that you need to successfully guide your students towards the opportunities that exist for them after high school. So I'm going to just start out with a quick overview of the Idaho Launch bills. So we started out with House Bill 24, which passed the House early in the session, and then it sat in the Senate for almost a month and a half before being taken up. And there were some things in that the Senate wanted to see, some changes that they wanted to see. And so they developed what's called a trailer bill, which is Senate Bill 1167. So the things that I'm sharing with you today are when we put the two of them together. The nice thing is within a few weeks after the legislative session is over, we will have the new statute that will show the combined results of the bill and the trailer. But right now, we still have to do a little bit of going back and forth between the bill and the trailer and see what changed and so forth. So I have both of them sitting here next to me in case you ask me a question that I can't just pop off the top of my head. So the way that the launch program will ultimately play out is we will see about $75 million from the In-Demand Careers Fund and approximately $2 million from the post-secondary scholarship flowing into Idaho Launch. It's going to take us about $4 to $5 million a year to operate the program. We're in the process of starting to draft the procurement for a platform that's going to allow us to administer the funds. We've got to put some technology integrations in place with the state board and other entities, well, the colleges, to make sure that we're able to, verify that the students are enrolled and are using their funding as it's intended. Within the In-Demand Careers Fund, that was actually an $80 million appropriation, and $5 million of it was provided this year to career technical education on an ongoing basis to help with secondary CTE added cost funding. And so that $5 million is going to always go over there. So that's why you're not seeing the full $80 million that you might attach to the In-Demand Careers Fund. And then one of the biggest changes between House Bill 24 and Senate Bill 1167 is that it preserved the Opportunity Scholarship. So the initial bill had intended to, yep, Jenny's doing the big thumbs up. And let me tell you, it wasn't the Workforce Development Council that was suggesting that the Opportunity Scholarship go away. That is out of our hands. We will do the best with, whatever the legislature tells us to do, but we are excited to see that is being preserved. So the $20 million that is available through the Opportunity Scholarship is actually going to stay there. They did do a little tweak within the statute for the Opportunity Scholarship, and it's going to direct it towards four-year degree programs. So it won't be used for associate or less. And their idea is that, Launch would support associate and lower, and Opportunity Scholarship would support four-year programs. But there's a little bit of, you'll see in a few minutes, a little bit of overlap in there when it comes to in-demand careers. So if we take the estimated ongoing amount of about 72 million and we divide it by the 8,000 per award is the maximum award that we can make, we can anticipate about 9,000 students being served each year under Idaho Launch. And under Launch, the options include any Idaho community college program, and I'm going to go into this on the next slide a little more deeply, or any education or training providers that are recognized by the council under either the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act or our state-funded Workforce Development Training Fund. So go to the next slide, Sherawn. So just to give you examples of what types of programs could be approved. So at the community college, it will be any program that the community college offers that the student, the individual wants to enter. So if they want to do an academic or a transfer degree, they can go into that. If they want to do CTE certificates, a 9-month basic technical certificate up to a advanced technical certificate to an associate's degree, they can do that. If they want to do workforce training, they can do workforce training. Anything that the community colleges offer will be eligible under Idaho Launch. When you get to that other category of approved training, education and training providers, and I see in the chat the apprenticeship, yes. So the apprenticeship, the majority of the apprenticeship offerings right now in the community colleges are offered under workforce training, and so those will automatically be approved. The other programs are ones that are approved by the council, and they have to be aligned to in-demand careers. So that is where the 4-year degree programs, like an RN program at ISU, would be eligible under this other category, right, that we approve. I saw the chat about ISU's College of Technology. This is where we would be able to bring in ISU's College of Technology. They're not automatically approved under the other side or under the community college side, but we would be able to bring them in along with LCSC's College of Technology under the programs aligned to in-demand careers. So we'll be able to bring in associate programs through Treasure Valley Community College, for example, through LCSC ISU. And then we will be able to look at selected 4-year degrees that align to in-demand careers and bring those in as well. And then this is where we also can bring in the private providers. So the commercial truck driving license schools, the union training centers, because we want apprentices that are going to the joint apprenticeship training centers to have the same opportunities as those that would go to the workforce training centers. So let's go on to the next slide, and I'm going to get to a number of the questions that I'm seeing pop up here, but the first being, where do you see those occupations in demand? So for us right now, so current state, occupations in demand means that we use a tool that Sherawn's going to go to in just a second, and we filter it by jobs that need more than a high school diploma. So they need some sort of training post-secondary. They have more than 150 job openings statewide and a positive growth rate. So that's just kind of the methodology that we use right now. We are going to be working with one of our committees, our policy committee, over the next couple of months to refine this methodology to make sure that it's going to serve us with the launch expansion. And so the plan is that we will be presenting that to the council for approval on June 7th. So Sherawn, go ahead and go out to the link real quick.
Okay, am I still screen sharing? It told me that my Zoom quit. Okay, that was weird. Okay, sorry.
At least I'm seeing it. I hope everyone else is.
Okay.
So the occupations in demand, it's a web-based tool that the Department of Labor created for us, the state board, career technical education, and any other. Yeah, and Sherawn, we're only seeing the slide right now, so you might have to
so let me
share. Yep, and then go back.
And then I'll reshare. Okay.
So they created this. It uses the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and it allows us to filter it in different ways. So depending on what we're working on, we can set different filters and then be able to get the data. So right here, it's showing you every single occupation that we have data on in Idaho. And so you're able to go in and say, we want, so actually click all and then just unclick no formal education credential and high school diploma. So right now, the way we do it would be to uncheck those two boxes. We would, in the total annual openings,
oops, sorry.
Yeah, we would put 150, and then in the projected growth rate, we would move that up to 0, and you can just type 0 in, it's easier. And then that will return a list which can then be downloaded. And I'm going to just have Sherawn pop over to a PDF that we already have of that. That shows you all of the occupations that are what we would currently consider in demand. But again, we're going to be looking at this because we already have recognized a challenge with that. So welding isn't showing up because the Bureau of Labor Statistics thinks that welding doesn't need any post-secondary training. And we know it does. So we're going to have to go to a secondary list that is the high school, that BLS says needs a high school diploma only. And we're going to need to pull occupations in from that list. So
okay, I'm gonna reshare, Wendy, because I don't think it was sharing.
It shared the
oh, did it share the list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Trying to.
And so Janelle's got a note in there that it seems like it's based on 2020 data. So all of the data elements in there are updated as they are available. So every June, July timeframe, the Bureau of Labor Statistics updates data, and that automatically gets integrated into this website. That's why it's such a great tool for all of us to be able to use, because we're all going to the same exact data source all the time. The column that Janelle was referring to, and you're not seeing it right now, but we also include real-time job openings. So we have a service that goes and scrapes real-time job openings from employers' websites, Indeed, LinkedIn, and all of the different aggregators of jobs. And it puts that. And so that's the column that is looking at real time. And that might be something that we look at as a factor. Like we look at either the total annual openings based on historical data and or the openings that are showing up in real-time job postings. So this one is the methodology that we just used on the website and shows you which occupations. And I want to say there's about 70 of them here. And a lot of them require bachelor's degrees, right? So, that's why I say four-year programs, or if somebody is going into a community college and looking at a transfer program, that's going to be approved through Idaho Launch. Go to the other spreadsheet or the other PDF, Sherawn. And so this is the additional occupations that show up when we just look at what requires a high school diploma and where we'll need to go through and do some sorting. So electricians, they need an apprenticeship. They need more than a high school diploma. Welders is going to show up on here. There's a number of occupations that we're going to need to bring in. So we'll be working over the next couple of months to finalize that methodology. And then we will be sharing that with you when you get back to school at the end of the summer. So you'll have access to the list of in-demand occupations at that time. Okay, let's go back to the slides.
Oops.
All right, next one. So how far is 8,000 going to go? When we think about the cost of different types of programs, 8,000 and it's 8,000 or 80% of the cost of the program, whichever is less. That's what the trailer bill did, was put in that 80% because they wanted to make sure that the students had some skin in the game. So a commercial truck driving license costs about $5,000. The apprenticeship programs, 4 years of related instruction runs about $7,500. Tuition each year at our 2-year institutions is about $3,400, and then it's about $8,000 at our 4-year institutions. So, you can see that from the standpoint of covering tuition and fees, this could cover an associate's degree, could cover the first year at a 4-year institution when it's for a program that's aligned to an in-demand career, and would be able to pay for all of the apprenticeship or other types of workforce training programs. Go to the next slide. So what can it be used for? And now we're going to go through these slides are all very quick and to the point. What can it be used for? This is, we'll go through these and then we're going to open it up for questions. So it can go towards tuition and fees. That was, again, another change between the original House bill and the trailer. The original bill had said it could be used for tuition and fees, room and board, or cost of certifications. They took out the certifications and the room and board. They may put that back in later. It was more of just a concern about, making sure that they knew that the money was being used for what it was intended. And so they decided to limit it to tuition and fees in the original rollout of it. So we can cover up to 80%, up to a maximum of $8,000. And if a student is getting Pell Grants, if they're getting other scholarships, that all counts towards their 20%. So that 20% can come from other financial aid. It can come, from their parents. It can come from, we see a lot where employers are paying the differential for apprentices, for sure. So there's opportunities for them to use a lot of different funding sources to make up that 20%. Go to the next slide. How much is available each year? 1/2 of the initial grant award. So they can, if they're in an associate program, they can use $4,000, up to $4,000 per year, whatever they're approved for, half of that. But if the program's less than 12 months, they can use the full amount. Go ahead and go to the next one. So who is eligible? They have to be an Idaho resident. They have to have graduated from an accredited high school or its equivalent. So where they're using equivalent, that means that if they received a GED, if they went to a private school, if they were homeschooled, we would be able to work with them under Launch. They have to have enrolled in or applied to an eligible institution. And so this is where I mentioned earlier that we're going to need to have some technology interfaces with the post-secondary institutions to be able to verify that. They have to begin their enrollment by the fall semester following graduation. And with workforce training types of things, that's a little fuzzier, right? Because they don't all start in September. I mean, some of them might start in July, some of them might not start until September or October if it's an apprenticeship program. But we'll be able to put some policies in place that allow for that kind of flexibility. And then they have to have completed a career pathway plan. And I'm going to talk about that. I think I have that on another slide, but the career pathway plan, I do, Sherawn, we do. Okay, let's go. We'll come back to it if not. Go to the next slide. So extensions for extenuating circumstances. What if they're going to go on a mission? What if they're going into the military? What if they're, doing structured volunteer service? Yes, we have to create a policy. And from a timing perspective, we anticipate having that policy developed and approved by the council in September. So our first priority is on the what's going to be required in the career pathway and what is how we're defining the in-demand jobs. Those will be approved by the council in June, and then we'll start working on the extenuating circumstances for the September council meeting. But health, medical issues, other circumstances that are appropriate. So we have to define this, and we will share this information with you as soon as we have it approved. Go on to the next slide.
Wendy, so sorry. Can I just interject really quickly? I assume this is the case, but it didn't say it on the slide. There was a question, to be eligible, they must graduate from an Idaho high school, correct? They cannot graduate.
Or its equivalent. They can't graduate from Washington and come over and get Launch under the new program. Now, somebody who moved from Washington would potentially qualify for the existing iteration of Launch, right? The kind of what we call the adult Launch. But no, to be eligible for these grants, they have to have graduated from an Idaho high school. So, okay, so career pathway plan. The council's going to adopt a policy on that. In the legislation, it says that, using next steps or equivalent. And so we're going to be working on what is required to qualify. And, I know working with Jenny and Sarah, you guys are probably very familiar with the portfolios in next steps. And know that on the back end, we can see that they completed Future Finder, that they did the cost of living estimator, they did the college costs. I'm calling these the wrong thing, sorry. But anyway, those are the types of things that would go into what's required in their career plan. And know that this first year of the program, it's not going to be overboard, right? We've got to, this is a huge learning curve for everyone. And so there will be some requirements, and we will be putting those together over the next couple of weeks, and then proposing them to the council in June to identify what they would look like, at least for the first year of the program. And over time, we might step those up, right? I mean, we have all of the tools in next steps to, do 8th grade career plans and all of the other activities. So we'll look at how we start aligning to those grade level checklists and, see what's going to be required over time. But at least for the first year, it'll be pretty simple. You're probably going to have to do some sort of an interest inventory, going to need to do cost of college calculator, show that they have explored, and that they're making a good, decision about what they're going to use the funding towards. Okay, so next slide. How will they apply for Idaho Launch? So this is one that, with the Opportunity Scholarship also staying, we want to make sure that this is an easy, seamless process. So, we've already started discussions about, can we use Scholarship Idaho as a single point of entry? They go in, they click the box. I want to apply for Launch. I want to apply for the Opportunity Scholarship. I want to apply for both. So they won't get both the first year, but let's say that somebody doesn't end up getting awarded an Opportunity Scholarship, we sure would want them to get Launch, right? So, we're working and we'll have information for you by the start of the school year as to how they're going to apply. Go to the next one. Okay, can they get both Launch and an Opportunity Scholarship? In the first year, the answer would be no. They wouldn't get them side by side. But could an individual complete their associate's degree with Launch and then get Opportunity Scholarship to finish their bachelor's degree? Maybe, possibly. Those are some of the things we have to work out. We got to look at the rules of both programs and make sure that, we're aligning, how that would work. So I don't want to hold us to anything today, but it's definitely something that we're, is top of mind for us and that we're exploring. Go to the next slide. So how are you going to receive information to support the class of 2024? So I think I saw a question pop up in the chat as to who was going to be eligible. So the first students that are eligible for this program are the class of 2024. We'll start accepting applications probably in October. We'll make first round of awards in December, probably have another award announcements in March, and then at the end of May. So that's what we're anticipating is kind of three cycles that will make the awards. But our plan, working with the state board, is to have a welcome package for you when you arrive back to school, so that you have materials, you have, videos to be able to explain this to students and parents. You've got, all of the information that you need, the list of in-demand occupations, what's required in next steps, how do I go about, doing these things, all of that we plan to have waiting for you when you come back to school in August. So I think that is my last slide, right, Sherawn? Yep, so questions. So now, do we want to go through the ones that are in the chat first?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I could go back up to the top and just start asking the questions, and then at the end.
Why don't you, do you want to do
that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we talked about the list of in-demand careers. So one of the questions I think needs a little clarification. A student who goes to a community college doesn't need to be pursuing an in-demand career? Is what, because it said any academic program. So what does that look like?
So any program that the community college offers is eligible for them to use their launch program. It does not have to be aligned to an in-demand career. Where down the road, when we have more requests than we have funding available, then we will have to prioritize the awards by those who are pursuing in-demand careers. But from the standpoint of the way that the legislation reads, any community college program is going to be eligible under launch. It's only if we have more demand than we have funding that we would go back on that side and prioritize towards in-demand careers. On the other side, the programs that we would approve all have to be aligned to in-demand careers.
Okay. I think there was some question about certain occupations being on the in-demand career list, but I think once we have that list, we'll I don't want to say yes or no to any particular occupation because we do have to go back, but you can go out to that website and you can look at, you know, how we currently view it and see the breadth of things that are on there. I just don't want to make specific promises about any particular occupation until our committees and councils has the opportunity to approve the methodology. Perfect. In terms of exceptions that are going to be made for students, if a student graduates in 2024 and just decides to take a year off for work, would they be ineligible, or would there be a path for them to possibly delay that money?
So that'll be part of us, you know, looking at those extenuating circumstances. And I don't, you know, obviously the mission, the, you know, health concerns, those things are absolutely going to be included in the policy. Other things like I'm just taking a year off to work, I don't know. I mean, that's part of the decision that the council is going to have to make as to whether they'll grant exceptions for that. But again, we'll have that information to you. That's one that we anticipate having formalized the policy in September.
Perfect. So for students who are going to receive the Idaho Opportunity Scholarship this year, but next year they would be eligible for launch. So I think what you're asking is if a student is receiving the Idaho Opportunity Scholarship this year, will they continue getting that Idaho Opportunity Scholarship, or are they going to be able to move over to the launch? That is something that we're still trying to figure out with the statute and specifically what the legislation says. So stay tuned. We will have answers for you soon. The Idaho Opportunity Scholarship lives under the State Board of Ed, and so those are some of the rules that we need to figure out. So there is going to be a little bit of interesting happenings between the class of 2023 and the class of 2024. But that's a great question, and we are trying to figure out that answer. So once we have it, we'll definitely share that out. Let's see. Will the Workforce Development Council be coming up with a universal career pathway plan that we all have to follow, or does the college and career advisor get input based on what they do currently?
So you absolutely have a vehicle for input. So just yesterday when our outreach committee was talking about working on this policy, we decided that a smaller subcommittee, which includes Jenny and Janelle, will be helping to define that. And so I would say get your recommendations to them. But as I mentioned, in this first year, just because it's a new program, we've got a huge, I mean, you think about every high school in the state, you know, having to work with every senior to be eligible. The requirements are not going to be enormous. I mean, they're going to be meaningful, but they're not going to be enormous. So I would suggest that you communicate with Jenny and, you know, share what your thoughts are, you know, knowing that the mechanism that we'll be able to use to track this is through what's available in the portfolios in Next Steps.
Okay, awesome. Launch will now be an application and not just deposited into student accounts like written in the original legislation. So I think the question is like, how do the students get the money? Does it get sent straight to the institution or the provider, or does the student get an account with the money?
So actually in the original legislation, it always was going to require an application because we would have to verify that they were eligible. They still had to be an Idaho resident. They had to be graduated from an Idaho high school and so forth. So there was always going to be an application, but we are going to be procuring a platform that will allow us to make those deposits into their account. And then as they, the institution, the training providers will invoice the platform, basically. The money will never go into the student's hands. It will go either directly to the institution or if it's a private training provider. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
And I can probably answer this one. Yes, launch is just a one-time $8,000 limit, but sure, or Wendy, if you want to elaborate.
That's it, one time.
Okay. Edie's asking about the eligible institutions. I know you shared that on the slide. That is something that I believe you guys are still maybe approving some of those providers, and where will counselors be able to log in and like find a list of approved training providers?
So like I said, the community colleges are automatically approved. And then the additional providers right now, you would find them on the idaholaunch.com website. And that's part of what we're still working on. Are we going to continue to maintain that Idaho Launch website with, and that show all of the approved programs that are aligned to in-demand careers? Are we going to better integrate it into next steps? We don't have an answer on that yet. But right now, if you wanted to look at who is eligible, who's been approved, you would go to idaholaunch.com. And we do have a process that we are working to add the private proprietary training providers. When we started the launch program, the majority of the training that we were providing was through our public post-secondary institutions. We did, obviously, for truck driving, have to go out to private schools, and we worked with all of the union training centers, but we are starting to work with additional providers. And I think I saw something about Northwest Lineman College. Yes, they would be eligible to apply to us. So they'll have to go through a process, which we are piloting right now, to apply to become an approved launch provider. And then we would add the programs that are approved into the launch website.
Perfect. Wendy, can you explain a little bit about how adults might be able to tap into the expanded launch? So if a student graduated in 2020 and hasn't been, they didn't go to school, they're not on a mission or anything, are they eligible for launch? Like, how will that process work?
So the students that, the adults, right, those that aren't class of 2024 or beyond, would come in under our existing program. And so the way that the legislation is written is if we don't obligate the full amount, so that's $72-ish million, let's say we only obligate $60 million towards the class of 2024, because that's who applies and what they get approved for, then we can take up to $10 million and put it towards kind of our adult launch program. So that's where individuals, and we have, just for next year, students that graduated in 21, 22, and 23 this year already qualify for the existing launch program. And we have about $5 million that we'll be investing in it for the 23-24 school year before the new program completely rolls out.
Perfect.
So what you would do with them, you just send them to idaholaunch.com. They fill out the form, a career planner from the Department of Labor or EQUIS will call them and work with them to get them their launch benefits.
And they can also apply for Idaho Opportunity Scholarship. So just remember that for Idaho Opportunity Scholarship, you don't have to be a current high school student to apply. You just had to have graduated from an Idaho high school. So if they've been out of school, but they've decided to go back, they are still eligible. They would still have to just meet that requirement of the 2.7 GPA and their FAFSA. So keep that in mind as well. And then I saw something about TVCC, Treasure Valley Community College degrees being eligible. Yes, I saw them on the list of approved.
Yes, when they are aligned to an in-demand career.
Okay.
But
So,
it'll be TVCC Caldwell, right? It won't be TVC Ontario because it has to be an Idaho institution, Idaho training provider. So if they're offering it at their Caldwell location and it's aligned to in-demand careers, then it would be included.
perfect. Is there an age limit for those who can apply?
So high school graduate is what, like that they're graduating that year. So there won't be an age factor in there if they're 19 years old, if they're 16 years old, you know, but it's that they're graduating that year and intend to, and they're going to be enrolling, you know, immediately the fall after graduation.
Perfect.
And obviously we're going to have to come up with some, you know, in our extenuating circumstances, we're going to have to come up with some things about what if they graduated early? How do we handle early graduates?
All those little one-offs.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, so I think there's been a little bit of speculation about this and definitely would love some clarification. Will a student need to pay back funding if they do not complete a program that they're approved for?
Yeah, so that's another policy that we have to adopt is to, you know, recapture funds. The existing launch program, yes, they do repay if they don't complete their training. The way that I believe the legislative intent is around this program is that they wouldn't have to pay it back if they didn't complete it, but we would recapture the funds. So if we find, I'm going to just make up an example here. Let's say a student did their first year at CSI and then they didn't show up in the fall for their second year, then our policy would allow us to revert those funds back into the in-demand career fund so that we could use that amount to award another student, right? But repaying, if they start the semester and they immediately drop out or they don't show up for classes, you know, those are all things that the council is going to have to talk about as to what would trigger a repayment.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. If a student starts out at an Idaho college and then transfers out of state or transfers to a not in-demand career, will they have to repay their launch funding?
Yeah.
So,
again, we're going to be working on that one. You know, our goal is to help them succeed, right? So if they transfer to an out-of-state, you know, college and complete their program, that's success. That's not something to penalize people for. So yeah, you're right. The legislation is very muddy on this. So that's where we're going to have to add some clarity in policy.
in terms of the recording for this presentation, since you all registered for today's meeting, I have a list of all the registrations, so I will just be emailing out everyone who registered for this event. If you don't think you registered and you just somehow hopped on, put your email in the chat and I'll make sure you get the recording, but I will send it out to everyone who registered today. Let's see, I think a comment about having options and flexibility for the career pathway plan. Some schools have really successful career pathway plans that we spend a lot of time creating that work really well. So maybe having a few options to choose from, so we're not all required to do the exact same thing, would be really nice and very much appreciated. I appreciate those comments, Carrie, a lot. That's really helpful as we start to talk about what will be required. Appreciate that. What determines how much of the $8,000 students will receive?
So that would be, so we're going to be looking at the cost of the program. So if the program costs $12,000 and, they're going to be expected to contribute 20% of it, they would get the full $8,000. If the program costs $8,000, then they would be expected to contribute 20% and they would get, I'm not going to do the math on here because you guys will all laugh at me when I get the wrong number, but anyway, they'll get 20% or 80% of the $8,000.
It would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
The deadline for Idaho Opportunity Scholarship for students who have already graduated was March 1st. We do have an Idaho Opportunity Scholarship for adult learners, but that is really specific to students who already completed some college credit and then maybe stopped out for whatever reason, but now they want to return. So really it would be on that same cycle of the March 1st deadline that your high school students are required to meet. Cosmetology schools and massage therapy schools, I think, again, those
to
schools,
be determined, but
yeah, any school who wants to be a training provider needs to apply through the Workforce Development Council to be approved as a training provider. Is that correct, Wendy?
Yep.
Are there any other factors like need-based, FAFSA, GPA, any other eligibility for launch?
No. So what it does is they have to be accepted into the program. So if there are GPA factors, or requirements, thinking of nursing programs at the College of, Eastern Idaho, right? So if there's a GPA requirement to get accepted into the nursing program, they're going to need to meet that. There isn't a launch specific GPA or needs-based factor that would be applied. So again, the needs-based, if we're in a spot, well, let me see here. I got to see if the trailer took that out. If we end up with more requests than what we can fund, then we have to prioritize by, first by in-demand careers, then by financial need. So we would go to financial need only in a situation where we have more requests than what we have funding for. And I mean, one of the things, whether you agree with this or not, they're not going to be required to file their FAFSA for launch. That was something that the legislature was clear about.
Okay, Carrie would like to unmute and ask a question. If anyone else, I think we've reached the bottom of the questions on the chat. So if anyone else would like to unmute and ask a question, I'm going to start with Carrie since she has one she'd like to share. And then after Carrie, if anyone else does, please.
I think Barry Pate has his hand up too. So after Carrie, let's go to Barry.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. I just didn't know how to write this one. I'm not even sure how to say it.
It's okay, just say it.
Okay, so let's say that a student gets like a Pell Grant, and they're going to go to school, and the launch funding specifically only pays for tuition and fees, right? And so, with the way that the Opportunity Scholarship works, if a student gets scholarships and Pell Grant, and if that were to exceed the amount of the expenses for everything, including room and board, travel expenses, personal expenses, all that, then the Opportunity Scholarship amount would not necessarily be the full $3,500.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, would only with the launch funding, would the full tuition and fees amount be covered by launch so that a student wouldn't be, say, penalized because they got other scholarships and the Pell Grant to pay for all the things that launch wouldn't pay for?
Yeah, so that, again, that was, along with my comment about the FAFSA is not required. We will not be getting into that. So they, if they're the cost of their program. And again, the cost of their program includes room and board and books and other things. So the cost of their program, could be $14,000. They'll be eligible for the full $8,000. And, it's going to get complicated with the, our launch dollars will not be last dollar. So that's something we're going to be working out with the financial aid directors and student account folks, because there's some possibilities that it could impact their Pell amount, right? So we've got some things to work out with respect to that, but we would not reduce their amount based on the fact that they have the other resources available, because you're spot on. Those other resources, let them go to room and board and the other expenses first, and use the launch grant for their tuition and fees.
So you wouldn't even know what other money the student receives. So whatever the tuition and fees are, whatever they would be allowed to get, that would get sent to their school, and then it would be up to the school at that point to credit their tuition and fees with that launch funding. And then let's say they were going to a community college and living at home, then that college would refund the student to be able to use their Pell Grant and scholarship money for their other expenses.
Yep, they would not be able to refund any of the launch grant. So and that's where, we'll be working with the financial aid and student accounts folks to make sure that, the launch, they have to apply the launch to tuition and fees. And then, if they refund Pell, whatever, that's all outside of our particular scope.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Wendy, just real quick. It feels like this system is setting up so that the burden is on the student to apply and find out if their program is eligible, and that kind of work through that way. In the former launch, the first version of launch, there was a list of approved programs, and we could market it from our side that these were approved programs. And I don't know what you're thinking there, but I would like to have something like that where our programs, our people here know that these programs are eligible and can market that program as being eligible for launch, and then help the students apply for that money. Is that a consideration that you have?
Well, you're in a good spot, Barry, because anything at the College of Southern Idaho will qualify. And then, like I said, we're going to have to figure out for the non-community colleges, do we maintain the existing launch, website and have all of the other programs that are approved under there? Because, we have to provide the in-demand occupations list to the legislature every January 1st. And so once we set the in-demand occupations, it's set for a year. We're not going to be able to deviate from it. So we will have some certainty as to what programs are approved. And then, in the application process, because if we have to end up prioritizing based on in-demand careers, they're going to have to tell us in their application what they intend, what they're applying for or enrolling in. So I'm planning to go to commercial truck driving school. I'm planning to go to CSI for diesel tech. I'm planning to, do this. So we'll have to capture that information. But the current launch site, like I said, maybe it won't be standalone, but it'll be integrated, and you'll have access to those additional programs that are approved beyond what's available through the community colleges.
Okay, and then the second thing is just the GED slide. I'm assuming that if you're 36 years old and you get your GED through an adult basic ed program, you're not, oh, you're nodding. Are you eligible then?
You're not going to be eligible for launch as you would have to go through the adult version of launch.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it would be if a student is, ends up not getting their high school diploma, but gets a GED, but it's the year that they're graduating, the year that they would be doing that is their class is when they would be eligible for launch. Yeah, that's going to be a tricky one to define as well. Thanks, Barry.
We have a few minutes left. Are there any other questions that people have not had answered yet.
Janelle?
I just wanted to clarify what you just said, Wendy. So this 36-year-old who got the GED, they would use old launch funds, but old launch funds can't be used at community colleges for tuition. So
that'll be part of our job, is going to have to be to blend the two programs so that somebody entering launch as an adult does have access to the full breadth of community college programs.
okay,
I don't know exactly, how, but that's in our minds. We can't maintain two separate lists,
yeah,
like two different programs. We're going to have to adapt the existing launch to cover the 4 credit programs, because really at the community college we're already covering a lot of their workforce training, and in some very rare instances some of the 4 credit programs. But that's
okay.
we're going to have to blend backwards.
Okay, so there will be some changes to the existing one as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carrie?
Okay, me again. I just noticed a question that I had written because I printed out the legislation and read through it. And I saw that it said that initial awards are announced by December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And then additional awards will be made no later than June 1st.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you are looking at having students apply for the launch funding along with Scholarship Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity scholarships, those aren't awarded until April. And so how would initial awards work as far as by December 31st? And then keeping in mind, of course, that the earlier that students know, they're able to make their decisions, because they may not even be able to pursue these programs if they don't know if they have the funding. And June 1st, I don't know about all the other schools, but for me, that's
Too
I'm
late.
probably not able to help them anymore.
I know. We don't always get asked before things get put into legislation. So the December 1st is really, I mean, we're going to be, the December 1st awards are going to have a lot of, upon graduation, right? Upon verification that you actually graduated, upon verification that you are still an Idaho resident, upon verification that you've, been enrolled or accepted into the college or the school. It'll probably have to have something that is, and if you end up qualifying for opportunity scholarship, then you're going to have to choose one, right? Because we won't know whether the opportunity scholarship awards are done until after we're, so yes, you qualify, and, as long as you meet these factors, you will get a launch grant. However, if you've also applied for the opportunity scholarship, and are awarded it, then we may pull the launch back if you choose to take opportunity scholarship. I'm making this up right now, Carrie, like thinking of how we would word the award letter.
Because obviously the hope is that every student who wanted to use it would be able to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know even what the chances are that in the first year the demand would exceed the funding. But if it did, then we can't really say that a student would be guaranteed to have that funding if they have an eligible program, right?
So yes, they would, because if we're applying or if we're awarding, this is where it's going to be, the sooner they apply, the more likelihood that they get in. So the December, round of awards, we have the whole pool available to us. If we do a March round, we're going to have a smaller amount because we've already made December awards. By the time we get to a June award date, we're going to have a much smaller pool of funding left. And so I envision, at least in this first year, that we wouldn't apply the prioritization in the December round if it is under the amount that we have. But then if we get to March or June, and now we have requests that exceed what is left, then those are going to have to get prioritized. Does that make sense? And yeah, Tiffany, you're spot on. Have them apply early. Right?
Okay.
It's going to be work with them to, and again, they don't have to apply early to a CDL school, but if that's what they're going to do, if that's their plan, then they should be submitting for that December deadline and saying, I'm planning on going to a CDL program. Okay, great, right? And we can make the award, but we're going to still have to check at the, before the money is deposited into their, into the platform. We're going to have to check in June that they graduated, that they're a resident, and that they were accepted into whatever program we're putting the money in for them.
But for the purposes of getting accepted for the launch funding, an intent to do so is fine, given that they're like, they can't even sign up for the CDL classes that early. So
exactly. Yeah. And that's why it says applied to or enrolled in, right? So if they've applied to a college, then, and that'll probably be an application question, right? Have you applied to the program that you're, seeking to enter? But because they haven't graduated yet, they haven't gotten award letters from the institutions yet. With this December, deadline, we're not going to have all of that information to validate until.
So it does say they have to have applied to or enrolled in, because that's what I mean about the CDL. A student who plans to get their CDL in the summer or in the following fall, at least up here in the Workforce Training Center, those classes aren't even open in December. They can't have applied yet.
Yeah.
They can't apply till probably late spring for those classes. So they wouldn't be able to answer yes to that question. It would only be about intent to apply.
And that's where in our policy, we're going to have to define what that means for the workforce training types of programs, right? The non-traditional programs that I'm looking to find the, participant means an Idaho resident for whom a grant is awarded and who has met the minimum academic standards of and has been accepted into and an eligible institution. So that's actually after, so participant. So I think we'll have the flexibility, Carrie, to say I intend to apply to, or I have applied to, and use that, but then their award letter will be contingent on the actual verification that they have met the minimum academic standards of and been accepted into the program.
Okay. Thank you.
We know it's 11, it's after 11. Please, I don't know if Sherawn and Wendy are available, but we can stay if you want to stay. But those of you who need to leave, we'll keep recording and we'll send out the recording. I see that I think Holly has her hand up, but just wanted to say that we know your time is valuable, and if you need to leave, we get it, but we'll stick around for a few more minutes. Okay, Holly.
Hi, thanks, Jenny. I'm wondering if there are any plans to increase the quote unquote adult scholarship. If people who don't immediately go to college are now going to be put into that bucket of money as well. Adults already have so many fewer financial aid opportunities. I'm just worried that they're not going to have the launch opportunity now, or it's going to be spread too thin for them.
Yeah, well, so, to that point, that was the whole reason that we started the launch program, was because of that gap where adults don't have, especially for where the program doesn't qualify for federal financial aid to provide a resource. And the first, 18 months of the program, we were just using resources from our Workforce Development Training Fund, which we only receive about $4 million a year into the training fund. We had the opportunity when the legislature provided us with ARPA funds to significantly ramp that up. And that's what you saw on that slide that Sherawn shared, that we've already obligated of close to $10 million this year, and then we'll have another 5 million next year. But, you know, if the demand for the high school students exceeds the amount of funding available, we won't have additional money to move over into the adult, and we'll just be, you know, limited to, you know, $1 million, $2 million a year for the program. But, you know, we've shown significant results, and, you know, that would be something that when that time comes, I would, you know, be advocating to the legislature to provide additional, you know, general funds into the adult version of Launch. The other thing, though, is, you know, Sherawn shared, you know, that, you know, the average age, you know, anecdotally, the average age of a technical college or apprentice in Idaho is about 27 years old. So, you know, we know that those that aren't going on immediately after high school are kind of floating around doing other things, and then they realize that they need to access post-secondary education in order to have a sustainable wage. I kind of hope that with Launch opening up these other options, that it doesn't have to just be the traditional college pathway that they pursue, that we'll start to see a little bit of balancing, like the, you know, those who don't think of themselves as go on material or you know, weren't going to, now that they have opportunities to go to lineman college or to, you know, CDL programs or other, you know, types of shorter term programs, that they'll take advantage of that. And then we don't have to catch them at 27 years old because they did it when they graduated from high school. That's my Pollyanna hope, is that we start to see that balancing.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say that Wendy did mention earlier that if we need to have another one of these sort of online meetings to talk about this, perhaps maybe a month from now, when maybe we have a few more details and you've thought about more questions, we can definitely work with Workforce Development Council to offer another one. I know this is a lot to take in, and it is kind of daunting because every time there's a new process, you know, it's just thinking about like, how's it all going to come together? Please know that like that state board and the Workforce Development Council, like we are working really hard to try to make this as smooth as possible, but we know there's going to be some things that come up that, you know, we just didn't account for or hadn't thought about, and that's how it is with every new program. But your questions today are so helpful in helping us make resources that are going to help you. So please just know we're so thankful for all your questions, and please keep them coming. You can send them to me, Sherawn, Wendy, whoever would like, all of us. But perhaps we could do one more of these in May, Wendy and Sherawn.
Yeah, and please let us, you know, like I said, our plan is to have welcome back kits available to you when you show back up at the end of the summer. So if you have, I mean, we're thinking about, you know, a video that you could show in a classroom or send out to parents, or, you know, cards or flyers, or, you know, having the ability to print additional ones beyond, you know, what we're able to send to you. But if you have like specific ideas, like it would be really helpful to have this, let us know so that we can consider that as we put these information packages together for you.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Wendy and Sherawn, for just being so willing to listen and to take feedback and to take suggestions. I think when we all work together and we, you know, we work with people who are working in the field, it just makes everything so much better. So we just appreciate you all. I appreciate all the counselors and advisors and everyone who tuned in today. I know it's not easy to jump on a Zoom call, so thank you so much. And I will, like I said, send this recording out. Please just keep sending us your questions and your ideas, and then we'll let you know about another meeting in May.
And Jenny, I'll send you the slides so that they can have the slides too when you send out the recording.
Perfect. That would be awesome.
And yeah, and we'll also send those two PDFs that have the kind of the current, you know, in-demand careers, and then those additional ones that we know we're going to need to consider. Just They say examples on the top. So no, this is not the final list, but we certainly want you to see and feel comfortable, with the fact that no, we're not talking about having 5 different options for our students. This is going to be pretty broad.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week and weekends.